with NDI are part of. David, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mario. It's a pleasure to be here and to hear from all the distinguished organizations we just heard from, who are actually bringing forward the solutions that we are in preparatoriousness towards. So that's that I'm very happy about. So just with relation to today's presentation, I'm going to focus maybe a little bit more on the really on the technological side, not demonstrating technologies, but the organizations that we're getting in touch with in preparation for the Mediterranean ECA. Next slide. So MD International, we're one of the longest standing, most experienced consultancies in Israel in connecting Israeli organizations with European frameworks and European organizations and certainly EU research, innovation, and coordination projects. So as I'll mention later, some of our close partners include some of the biggest technological organizations in Israel, as well as some of the most important environmental organizations, including aerospace industries, Israeli Aerospace Industries, which is the largest technological company in Israel, Doral Energy, which is possibly the most important environmental focused investment organization. Bazan is the largest refinery, who are making a major transition towards green energy, and many others, and we can get into that as well. And of course, we work with all the universities, and as well for a long experience in the maritime area. We also are well connected with the relevant ports, etc. Next slide, please. So for Life from ECA, so we conduct some background literature research regarding the legislation that has been, that could be, that is, coordinating different stakeholders, which is what I'll focus on, and guidance and support for stakeholders, which is going to become very important as the MEDEC comes into effect. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so just a little word about what we're all doing here, just to remember that from our studies and from the different research and from REMPEC, etc., we can expect, as the MEDECA comes into force, we could already anticipate saving more than 4,000 cases of premature death potentially, and in the future many thousands more. So there's a real impact to what we're doing here, not only to the environment, which is crucial, and not only to protecting the planet from environmental and from climate change, but really to people's lives. Next slide, please. So what I want to focus on for a minute is the Eastern Mediterranean and its significance and its increasing significance. So as many people have heard, there's gas fields are popping up like mushrooms there recently. The population growth is significant in the Suez. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about that. So the gas fields, their significance, I'll talk about them in a moment. Just to get an idea about the population growth. So the EU average population growth is 0.4%, and in the Eastern Mediterranean, it's closer to 2%. And over time, this is really significant. And the Suez, as everyone knows, because of the ship that got stuck in the Suez, it's a very important core point, and has transfers more than 30% of all global container traffic. Next slide. So really quick about all the natural gas that's popping up. We're talking about somewhere along the lines of 125 trillion cubic feet. Next slide. Which is 3.5 trillion cubic meters. This is not enough to replace everything that's coming from Russia, but it can, in theory, provide all of Europe's needs for a number of years. Next slide, please. And indeed, this deal between the three-way deal between the EU, Israel, and Egypt was just signed last week. So this is very significant. Next slide. So then just on the matter of population, as you can see, just from this image, you can see that the concentration of population over there in the East Mediterranean is really prominent. Next slide, or a slide. I can see it on this screen, but not on this screen. Okay, thanks. Okay, so and all this is really collaboration in the Eastern Mediterranean, and all around is really growing significantly. The East Mediterranean gas forum came up, which could potentially be a very significant opportunity for gaining support also with regards to our work towards the NECA. Next slide. It should be mentioned that the East Mediterranean is even more polluted than the rest of the Mediterranean, which is already possibly the most polluted large water body in the world. Next slide. Well, I think we can go on. Next slide. All right. So this is just an idea of where things were before the NECA was signed, as far as who is in and who is out. Possibly a bit surprising. Next slide. And indeed, some of you have significant work towards the NECA from also South and East Mediterranean countries. So thanks to them, we made a lot of progress. Next slide. So it should be said, in Israel, there's the movement is very strong towards protecting the Mediterranean specifically, but the environment in general. There was some extent of lack of focus on the matter of environment until recently, and then changes in atmosphere and politics, and now things are moving very fast. And indeed, the regulations are already coming into force for everything to do with the Barcelona Convention. Next slide. And just to emphasize some other relevant countries in the area, also Egypt and Turkey have made major steps in the last, well, really in the last year. All three countries have committed to significant targets for climate neutrality. Next slide. So in our work for NECA, we founded the NECA Forum, which is focused to begin with in Israel, to bring together all the stakeholders that are relevant, that would have an interest with regards to the NECA. And this ranges from research institutions through to technological companies and, of course, governing bodies. Next slide. And we would say, I mean, obviously, very unfortunate that this oil spill happened a couple of years ago, but I will say that that it was fortunate just in the sense that it got a lot of attention and made our work a lot easier. Next slide. So here are some of the organizations that we got involved. Obviously I'm not going to go through everyone, but we have all the most important research organizations, governing bodies, and major environmental organizations that are pushing things forward. So we're really happy with this group that we put together, and we feel more or less that for Israel we've covered the most important bases, and now we want to focus on exactly how we're going to use that connection, that knowledge, and to expand further into the rest of the area. So we have the ports as well. Next slide. So one of our most important partners in this is Mercy, which is the Israeli Mediterranean Sea Research Center. And they've been doing, one important thing is that we have a lack of monitoring stations in the East Mediterranean compared to the North and the West Mediterranean. So they've been establishing those, and they've been conducting some research about the severe damage that has happened, especially in the East Mediterranean, but of course in the Mediterranean in general as a result of the very high pollution that we need to get to work on. Next slide. So finally, what I want to point out is a little bit about, I mean, we're talking about Israel, we can't not talk about startups and high tech. So there's a lot of that going on as well. And what I would say is, so these are all companies that that we've been in contact to some extent with. Some of them are close partners. Some of them we've interested in potential work. These organizations, all these organizations on the right here, their expertise is using AI and monitoring tools in order to identify variations in water quality, events in the water that might take place, and air quality monitoring through very, very sophisticated AI. And what they're doing is really interesting. And they, I can say also Breezometer and Candu are already adopted in Paris and in other European countries for these kinds of activities. And we think that we should look further into this, that they could potentially, these sorts of innovations and using them at the right time could potentially take a very significant role in monitoring the Mediterranean, understanding what's happening, you know, what exactly where the impact points are, and how we can have the greatest effect. And just to mention our close partners on the left side of the screen, they're some of the biggest organizations in developing, including, we discussed hydrogen energy today, so including in hydrogen energy, that's H2 Pro. Ogwind are also in hydrogen storage and movement, and potentially this could be used if we increase the infrastructure for hydrogen ships, hydrogen-based ships. Okay, so that's all from me. Thank you very much. And I should say, if this inspires you guys to want to discuss, to meet these organizations, we want to help you do that.